right, hey everyone, welcome to Served. I am Andy JW in the house. Producer Mike is not here with us. He's on the injured list. Techie Sean is here with us. I got to be honest, watching an educated human do something basic over and over and over again and continually struggle is kind of like it's a weird thing to see, right? It kind of can make you uncomfortable, guys.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Like Wertheim trying to get on a computer anytime before a show. Like, is that?
He's got a lot of pieces of equipment here.
It turns into a sailor when he's upset with his technology.
I am certainly like, no one has ever been like, wow, you're like Steve Jobs. But you literally, it's not working. I can't get on. It's not, now Mike, you sent him with, what did you send him to Europe with? I mean,
I'm going to hold up all these pieces and all these chargers, and they don't work in the.
Yeah.
We need universal charging here. All right.
Did you send him with like the dummy pack that I take, or is it?
I mean, it is literally the same pack that you have, and so the race to the bottom with the two of you, technology wise, is on.
I got to be honest. It's like
these we've got it.
If you have kids in
the car, too many gadgets here.
If you have kids in the car, just turn it off for the next 15 seconds while I imitate Jon Wertheim trying to set up anything to get on for a show. You ready?
Yeah.
I mean, where do I put it? Did you send it? Fuck. Do I have the am I in? Is it up? Is it up?
Oh man! I mean, for a guy that travels so much internationally and everything, I think you would have like a Swiss Army knife. Like you'd be like, "Oh, I got that adapter. Oh, I got."
I'm telling you. Here's the other one. I'm going to show you.
For the listeners, he's just picking up white pieces of technology.
I think he just picked up an ashtray.
This is like a medieval mace that somehow is supposed to get me Wi-Fi and battery in the same device. Anyway.
It's like, what do you think? Wait, no, I'm not done yet. What do you think what do you think would be easier? Next week, John just being like, nailed it, or like the three of us trying to catch mosquitoes with chopsticks?
Mr. Miyagi.
What do
I keep thinking, honestly, I keep thinking of the player. I'm in Vienna today, and you can't have the 0 before the 1, and this one needs a different adapter. And I'm thinking these poor players that must have to go through so much shit when they travel the world just to like call home. Added to these stresses of being a tennis player, that you need all these gadgets and adapters, and they still don't work 62% of the time.
And yet. Anyways,
sometimes they do.
I guess
maybe PTPA should add IT services.
Oh my gosh, stop! That's unnecessary, Mike. We're not petty like that. Stop.
I'm not being petty.
Yeah,
it's a serious concern.
Yeah, I get it. I wonder if they would cover Wertheim.
I'd like that. I would join. I don't need luggage tags, but I need to know whether to drop the 0 before I can.
They wouldn't be able to tell us if you joined, but you would join. Sorry. Okay, we're moving on. Gosh, Mike, see what you do to me.
Moving on.
You see what you do to me. All right. All the tennis players are in California. There was a lot of Coco was doing the rounds. Was she taking pictures with Serena? Sabalenka was there.
Yeah.
The stars.
Yeah, they looked great.
The stars were out with the stars before heading down to Indian Wells.
You think next year for the Dink, you'll be out there walking the red carpet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if there's any credibility left.
Ben Stiller did have the funniest nomination intro speech. It was really good for props. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It was hilarious.
I just saw pictures. He was like crawling around or crawling up a stage or something. I didn't watch it. But
it was. Go watch it. I can't describe it. He's funny. I'm not. Go check it out.
I will tell you, it was pretty fun. So we did the Dink, which is about basically pickleball, and I'm a villain in it. And Stiller was on set for 2 days, and watching him work, it's not an accident, right? Like these people who are great at what they do, it's just never an accident. Whether it's tennis, whether it's what he does. Anyways, big Indian Wells story. Like I'm looking at Indian Wells, and I'm looking at the men's side, where obviously number 1 in the world is not going to be with us for the next 3 months, and Jannik Sinner. Zverev is going to be seeded number 1. He hasn't played great. Didn't play great in the Golden Swing, and then I think he finished his match, but he was one of many who lost the week of Acapulco to their guts and their insides, not like willpower. It's weird. It's like we're in 2002 again, where you have kind of a favorite in Alcaraz based on what he's done there and the court plays to his liking, but it kind of feels wide open, right? Would you take, I feel like for the last 25 years you would take, or 20 years you would take, if you give me two people, I'll take them against the field and put 5 on it, right? And it doesn't feel that way this year. I mean, Sabalenka and Iga are already talking about how they're tired, and it's month 2 of the season, but it feels like everything is kind of open season going into Indian Wells, JW.
Yeah, the aberration here was Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Serena, players that are winning 20 majors. What's par for the course is we have a lot of parity, and I think that's what we are going back to. Having said that, Alcaraz did win last year and did beat Sinner, Zverev, and Medvedev, three top 5, top 6 guys in his last 3 matches, so I think he's the favorite. But yeah, I mean, I think honestly, we can say this about Indian Wells, but I think this is kind of tennis in general for the foreseeable future. The days of the outliers of players winning 20 majors and we can block them through to the finals. And if Roger, Rafa, and Novak aren't there the final weekend, it's some staggering upset. I think we're going much closer to any given Sunday route.
And this is why you play, because if we're having this conversation right on the heels of Australia, where we don't know what's going to happen, we know that at that time Sinner has a tribunal in April. Think about it. Novak leaving that with a muscle tear. We're thinking we're not going to see him until he's got clay underneath his feet. And then February happens, and all of a sudden Zverev has struggled. He's normally the standby, right? He's like, if Sinner's not there, then, they enter the conversation. We didn't think Novak was going to be there. Rublev, we're like, he's kind of struggling, maybe on the downswing. Tsitsipas, maybe on the downswing. All of a sudden, they've reinterjected themselves into the conversation by playing great. And, Taylor Fritz, you're like, he's extremely bankable, has been dealing with an ab injury. Rude, lost to the guts apocalypse in Acapulco as well. Medvedev hasn't been reliable on hard surfaces this year. So it's just crazy in tennis how kind of the conversation always changes, post Australia, you're going, I hope we see Maddie Keys, sooner than later. She gets kicked out of Austin. We haven't seen her since. Sabalenka hasn't played that well. Iga has said, it's just too much. The schedule's too much. They get done a month earlier than the men, or close to it. Don't write me and say, no, it's only 3.5 weeks. It's a lot longer, but it feels like there's a lot of carnage early in this season, JW.
A lot of flux. But again, I think this is what, being a tennis fan, we've got to readjust for the reality. And this is what being a tennis fan was like before we had this onslaught of talent. And yeah, some players are up and some are down, and Tsitsipas is fading. Oh, wait, he's winning his first 500. I don't know if you saw Novak gave him some interesting credit for that one. As Zverev, you're right. For a guy who's poised to take over the number 1 ranking, Zverev is not exactly grabbing it by the collar, but he could turn that around. We're going to see a lot of parity. I mean, look, Coco has not played fantastically well. We have 2, we were talking about this last week, right? We had Andreeva and we have Anna Samova, these 2 great stories. We've seen Madison Keys with this great breakthrough. She has not played since. It's been a weird year, but I think this is kind of what the new reality in tennis is going to be. And if you're waiting around for a player to win 20 majors, you may have a long wait. And if you're willing to kind of go week by week and see some players are hot and some are taking advantage of a light draw, and this is going to be much more what being a tennis fan is going to be like for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting, and even on the women's side, where you've had these 2 dominant forces, like you're saying, Navarro hasn't played great. She actually managed the tournament really well in Australia, got to the quarters with less than her best stuff. I saw her dad actually at the Asheville thing. I said, that's actually going to be, it's almost more impressive when you don't have your fastball and you're still able to get hitters out and still able to give us, 6 innings pitched with 2 earned. Like that's a quality outing when you don't have your best stuff. Madison's coming back. I'm personally happy that she was okay enough to just kind of take the time post Australia. Jess Pegula winning in Austin last week, which I was very happy because they got the old fucky Magoo with not being able to have Madison in the draw. At least that they had their headliner get through and win the tournament over Kessler. Kessler keeps winning a lot of matches. Beat Coco last month. Kind of came out of the scenes. Was it in Cleveland last year? And thank goodness, because American women's tennis is really struggling for depth. So let's throw another one in there. That's obviously a joke, so you can save me there as well. Tsitsipas winning in Dubai. I feel like it's this thing when we're looking at him, the side door often comes before in the exit before we need to, and then all of a sudden when we're kind of not paying much attention to him, it's like, oh, there's going to be a quick court, which I played the tournament exactly one time, a fast court in Dubai, and all of a sudden he re-enters the conversation and gets back into the top 10, which I think is important. He has nothing to defend in Indian Wells and Miami. And then, the Monte Carlo, and you feel like it would have been really easy for him to kind of wait for his best surface to try to throw some points on the board. But I think this was a big win, and credit to FAA too, is playing his third final of the season already, making another final. But what do we make of Tsitsipas?
I was surprised it was his first 500. You sort of forget about that he's won a Masters series, and clay is where he makes his bones. But no, I mean, I think, you know what we always used to say, ironically enough, about his romantic partner, maybe she wasn't really number 2, number 3, number 4 in the world. Maybe she wasn't that good, and those rankings may have been a little deceptive, but she wasn't 30 or 40 either. And I think that's where we are with Tsitsipas. Is he going to get back to another major final? I don't know, but he's a top 10 player, and he brings to bear sort of that easy power, and he's a nice athlete. And when he's got it together, not just on clay courts, he's too good to be outside the top 10. And all of a sudden, it's sort of the theme of this show so far. You look at the field in general. Could Steph Tsitsipas win Indian Wells? Absolutely. And part of that is he's now sort of playing okay these last few weeks. And part of that is, Novak is a few weeks from turning 38 and has had a rough start to the year, and Sinner's not on the scene, and Zverev is not playing particularly well. And you sort of go down the list, and you sort of, he must be saying, why not me? And again, this is parity is going to be the name of the game, certainly on the men's side, and I think to some extent on the women's too, for the next few years. And that's fine. I mean, I kind of like that there's going to be unpredictability, and we're going to see players go up. And here, Denis Shapovalov makes a nice return, and Navarro comes and goes, and then she's winning finals, love and love. I think we're just going to see a lot more volatility, and that's fine. That's going to cause some adjustment among fans, and we're not going to be able to pencil players through. But yeah, I mean, Tsitsipas is a great example of the kind of guy who can really take advantage of this era we're in. We used to say, hey, when these guys, when Novak and Rafa and Roger aren't here, it's time for player X to really make their charge. Now, the guy ranked number 1 is not going to be on the scene for 90 days as well. So there really is opportunity here. Yeah, and I'm curious what you think about this concept, JW, because we'll talk about Tsitsipas, and it's almost because he's been so good, right? He's made the finals in Australia. He's beaten Roger in Australia. He's been a set away from winning a Grand Slam title. He's won Monte Carlo, I think, 3 times now. A significant amount. He's beaten the best players, and it's this weird thing. And we do it some with Zverev also, and it's not really that fair. It's like we underrate people based on their previous accomplishments and how good they were, right? So if there's any slippage, we go, oh, well, they disappointed because we thought once upon a time they might win a slam, but then Tsitsipas goes and wins Dubai and goes, you know what? My base setting is like 8. So anyone you're talking about who's 24, who you talk about is really good, but then you kind of discourage the notion of, my path when I'm kind of just 8 and I can win tournaments anytime. I do think there's that thing where if we had a certain expectation set for you and maybe you didn't quite get there, that all of a sudden we can kind of sleep on how good you actually are, even if you're not as good as some people wanted you to be. You are a victim of the bar you set, and let me take advantage of this opportunity and throw this back at you. I think that applied to you for a lot of your career. Yeah, and you were playing really at a high level. But you win a U.S. Open in 2003, and when people then are saying, I don't understand what's wrong with Roddick. He's only number 3 in the world now. He's not even getting to major finals. Mm-hmm. What is it like for you to be a victim of the bar you set? Yeah, I wasn't a victim. 1, 2, it's a little
to me, I was always trying to figure out how any sort of coverage made sense, right? You could be the third team in the SEC in football, and you'd be like, man, these guys are good. These 20-year-olds playing football against 8 other teams in our little region, that guy can play. And then I would lose a Wimbledon final, and they'd be like, that guy sucks. I'm like, I'm playing against Earth. He's playing against Auburn. Like, so I just, the consistency in coverage bothered me. But it's also weird. It's like, we can make certain things true if we say it enough. I won, but I was never an otherworld talent. I had things that I needed to avoid. I had weaknesses in my game. I had things that I became adequate at, footwork, the right movement, not missing a backhand. I couldn't create off of it, but I rarely, later on in my career would just randomly miss balls on that side, making it the most effective version of weakness. But it's kind of like, oh, you did it once. If you don't do it again, then you suck. I'm like, no, I kind of sucked when I did it too. But I view that as pretty good. But yeah, I think we become bored with people if they've already accomplished a certain thing, right? Do I feel at the end of Wimbledon where there's 128 of the best players on earth that are all trying to do one thing, and you beat all of the field except for one who's the best ever at that time, and someone goes, well, that means you suck. I'm like, no, that means he's better. There's probably a conversation in between.
Are athletes that rational? But it's a great point. I mean, there are 8 billion people on this planet. If the USTA data will tell us that 7.5 billion of them play tennis, that was a joke. But no, I mean, you have 8 billion people on this planet, and Steph Tsitsipas is now outside the top. There are 10 better players than him. What's going on with that guy? Yeah. I wonder if athletes are rational enough to say essentially what you said, which is like, guys, let's take a look at the big picture here. We're doing okay.
Well, the other thing I heard one time was I got into a fight. I know you won't believe this, JW. Fight's probably a strong word, but I got in one of those little ticky-tack back and forths in a press conference that I was prone to get into, and now we've just made a show about it. But I think I was playing someone, let's call it Julian Beneteau, who's someone who wasn't ever going to be a top 10 player, but was like consistently between 25 and 60. And you look at him and you're going, okay, he doesn't serve massive. He has the guy had a really, really, really nice career that he carved out when he wasn't the prospect in juniors that you were looking at saying this guy's going to be a world beater. Like he did very well. And someone was, already talking about a match like 2 days later. And I said, that's not fair what you're doing. And I was like, oh, well, you're playing a journeyman next round. I go, okay, what's that journeyman's ranking? And at that time they're like, I don't know, 28 in the world. And I go, okay, how many Major League Baseball players get to call themselves an all-star this year? And if you're an all-star, are you a journeyman? And they go, well, no, if you're an all-star, you're not a journeyman. With people that had to pull out because of injury, there was something like 72 Major League All-Stars that year. And I go, so just on an apples-to-apples basis, you're being hypocritical based on your own metric for success and respect, right? Like there's 57 All-Stars every year, relievers and whatever. We have 3 different designations of pitchers that can become all-stars and middle relievers and, whatever it is. But then yet we consistently are lazy about people who are really, really good in our sport and top 25 or 30 in a global sport where everyone plays in every country. I think we need to do a better job of selling our sport and how fucking hard it is. And Steph Tsitsipas is a great player. And we're like, you can't say he's a great player. No, he's a great player, but only when compared to the rest of Earth, right?
Exactly. I'm not going to that neurosurgeon because he fell out of the top 10. We don't do this with too many other lines of work.
Another time I got salty, and I guess this is turning into the Salty Magoo show, but I remember I was playing Roger somewhere. Might have been like Miami the last year. That might have been the last time we played officially, which obviously I got the win. But we play there, and he was ranked like 3 in the world, and I was ranked like 30 or something. Maybe someone asked him. Anyway, so someone's like, oh, with 3 in the world, he's really slipping. And there were 15 people in the room, and they basically kept going back to the point where it's like, is Roger, I mean, they were asking it in a way to where I'm digesting is like, is Roger a bad player now because he's 3? And I'm going, okay, raise your hands. Everyone in here, raise your hand right now. So you see kind of people like reluctantly raise their hand. I go, all right, exactly 3 of you are top 3 in the room, and exactly all of you would tell me that you're good at your job. And it was like silence. I go, who are the best 3 in here? You know, I go, you guys need to have when you're diagnosing, just a little bit of consistency. And I'm not saying you have to say it's great. You can say maybe he's not what he was. Maybe the consistency is not there. Maybe there are other people that can bother him more often. But like this line of questioning is frankly like offensive to anyone who's not him also. Like you're asking me about that? He's like, I would kill for his worst year. Like, are we kidding ourselves? What are we doing? Okay, Tsitsipas in Dubai, Acapulco. A lot of guts going on down there. That was carnage. Rude out. Zverev said he felt it. It was a lot of pullouts. Casper went down, but I think in our preview show I said Mahach might be sneaking towards the top 10 this year. I think earlier in the year, and he put 500 on the board. Davidovich Fokina making a little bit of a comeback run as well. Has been playing great the last couple of weeks. Chapo, aforementioned. Last summer, 140 in the world, now back into the top 30. Will be seated at all the tournaments, the thousands, the slams. Nice little run for him. You alluded to Emma Navarro winning her first 500 tournament, as well as Tsitsipas winning 0-0 in the final. Do you have that on your bingo card, JW?
Yeah, that's a nice that's a nice outing. That's college town. It was like 55-minute final. But, good for her.
I know of at least one Grand Slam final. Let's test your trivia. And if you're listening at home, go ahead and scream the answer at someone. And then if you're at a red light, someone's going to be just looking at you. Grand Slam final.
Can I give you a story first?
Yes, give me a story.
So, tell me who they are, and I'll tell you a funny story.
I remember one specifically. Have you ever seen a Grand Slam final, JW, that was 6-0, 6-0? And what year was it? And who were the participants?
So I think I know the answer, but I'll tell you a funny story. It's Steffi beating Zvereva, Roland Garros. I don't know. Tell me on the year. It was like 32 minutes, 28 minutes.
It was, that is correct. It was the year, there was a golden slam attached to that 0-0. Oh. It was 1988. She beat
So I'll tell you a funny story. A former player went to watch warm-up before that final. And, you know, Steffi is Steffi, and she's this dominant force. And this former, I won't name her, but her last name rhymes with Gavritilova.
Yeah.
So
could be anyone.
Apparently before the warm-up for the final, Zverev was playing, and her father has like a shopping bag full of balls, and he's bouncing the ball and hitting them over from a shopping bag.
It's not great. She's
about to face Steffi Graf, and you're thinking, this is not going to end well. And it did not. Terrific doubles player, Zvereva. She deserves to be known for more than that. But yeah, that was we don't often get a double bagel in a major final, especially when your dad's warming you up with shopping bag tennis balls.
And that's not the one. But how's that? I win the Golden Slam, all 4 slams in the same calendar year, the Olympics, and won a Grand Slam 0-0. That's mean. That's a mean one. Emma Navarro winning her final in Merida 0-0. And the highest ranked player she played last week was 39 in the world. And you could say like, oh, the draw was whatever. And it honestly makes that discussion with keeping Madison Keys out of Austin even worse because they still didn't attract a field. But I'll save that for another day. But Emma Navarro, it's weird. She kind of has these progress points of, that's what a top 10 player is supposed to do, right? If the draw kind of fizzles out and you're not playing, the draw that Maddie played to win Australia or anything close to it, you're supposed to go take care of business. You're supposed to have the score lines of 2-1, 3-3. 0-0 is extreme. I don't think I could beat Teki Sean 0-0 right now, but don't shake your head. No, I could. But that's kind of what Emma Navarro, that's what you want someone 8 in the world to do when there's, maybe not the strongest field that there's ever been at a 500. I actually like it. Some people, but she didn't even play anyone. I'm like, yeah, but she drilled everyone, right?
500's a 500 too. That comes with a nice haul of points. And no, I mean, you can make a statement. Madison Keys made a statement in Australia. There are other kinds of statements you can make throughout the season. And when you differentiate yourself from a player not in the top 40 and make it look like you're at a completely different level, that's a statement of a different kind.
That's progress. JW, when you're looking forward to Indian Wells, what kind of stands out? We talked about the storyline where it's anyone's ball game. Are there any players specifically that you're looking at? Do you take in the reputation of how the event plays as far as court surface? It is very different than anything else we see throughout the year because the desert air, the grittiness of the court, all of the things. That's why you see Alcaraz. The more exaggerated the bounce, most of the time for someone like Carlos Alcaraz, it's not a surprise that he wins on clay where the ball bounces up and away. Sometimes they're unpredictable. The footing is unpredictable. Artistry kind of explodes out of him when there's a little bit of unpredictability. In grass, he can hit a chip to get the ball down. Off of a chip, he can create the spin mechanism to get it up and down. The craftiness, and it's a weird, different, extreme bounce. Now, Indian Wells and Wimbledon could not be further away from each other as far as the way they play and the way the ball bounces. Point being, when you can do everything and things get a little weird as far as condition, in Indian Wells, the ball travels through the air fast, but then hits the court and kind of checks up slowly. But when you're Alcaraz, you can create a million different spins and play a million different ways. The more extreme the bounce and conditions, I feel like he kind of settles in as opposed to when he's playing on a dead indoor surface, which kind of mutes everything.
I wanted to ask you about this. I mean, the other thing, too, is that the conditions at this event are all over the place. And you can play at night and you look in the stands and people are wearing like double parkas. And then you go in the middle of the day and people have like, the fans have washcloths with ice on them. I think that impacts play as well. So does this stadium court. You know this. You've played on this court. I mean, this court also is like 3 levels below ground level, which also sort of makes for some. I mean, with the wind. I mean, last year we had bees. That was a new playing condition we hadn't seen before. But no, I'm curious what you make of this announcement that we're going to have this uniform surface. That this is going to be essentially the same surface as Miami, the U.S. Open. This lake hold. It doesn't necessarily. I don't know what that means to a casual fan. I don't know how that impacts play if you're just coming by to watch some tennis. But what do you make of this announcement that Indian Wells is kind of going to lose that gritty surface and go to something much more like the U.S. Open?
The ball's going to fly then because you can't retrofit air, right? That skinny air where there's like 0% humidity on any day, and so therefore, if you hit a kick serve like Indian Wells, people go, okay, slow. That means Andy's not going to play well there because he doesn't, he plays better on fast surfaces. But if you give me a court where I can hit a kick serve and it bounces over someone's head and I flipped my forehand up, so there are different ways to use this court. If it is going to a surface like a US Open or a Cincinnati and you have that air where there's not an effective humidity to actually make the ball a little bit heavier, it's going to be like BBs. I mean, you're going to see Riley Opelka kicking serves over the third row. Like it's going to be like Ben Shelton should be licking his chops if he's in a surface like that. But then you're going Casper Ruud with his spin profile. That ball is just going to hit and explode off the court. I don't know that we need to worry about making all surfaces the same. I don't think anyone who is listening to this podcast has been watching men's tennis and the way it's evolved in the last 25 years. And this isn't a criticism of where we're at, but I think the slow surfaces have come middle. I think the fast surfaces have largely gone away. So we're in this thing where a lot of it kind of looks the same. And they're going, well, the players are, they all play the same. I'm like, no, the players play the most effective version of themselves based on the conditions you're giving them. I guarantee if you make everything as fast as it was in the 90s, you'd have a lot of great volleyers very quickly. Like that matters. I don't know that I completely understand the continuity between playing a hard court tournament in March and needing it to match up with a hard court tournament in September when you have nothing but clay and grass in between. If we're going to focus on making something consistent, the weight of a ball, the felt count in a ball, like the ball matters way more as far as health than the court. I actually would like to see the courts become a little bit more extreme. I'd like to see, a tournament that is known as the fastest court, and you can circle it going in. These players are going to play great at this place because it's so fast. Indian Wells is actually interesting to me because you can get someone that serves big, that can kick it big. Lubicic won one year, and I lost to him there. I want that one back. But and then you have Rafa was an absolute nightmare because if he was set with any 2 feet with that spin mechanism, that ball was above your ears when you were hitting it the next time, and it was an impossibility. So have they said why they need to match up a hard court event from March with something in September and why we're throwing a parade for that?
There was sort of this weird general statement about we need more uniformity and this will give more consistency. But I also feel like, don't you think that, keep going, because I think we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, but because you don't get paid for a court service and you get paid for a ball, so they're acting like they're acting like they're solving a problem. They're just getting it completely backwards with what they're solving. No one asked for a court solution. We asked for a ball solution.
Right. Yeah, that's between them and Lakehold. No, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. And I just think as a general principle, I don't think we need homogeneous surfaces, right? I mean, I
totally agree. I couldn't agree more.
Ritzy and Grime. I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think it's a tennis virtue that you have to adjust, and that Indian Wells doesn't play the same way Miami plays. I'm not sure why that's a problem that doesn't need solving, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, especially, and I'll go off on this in a little bit, but when every Masters 1000 event is 27 days long now, it's not as if there's not time to adjust to a court surface. If you win Indian Wells, you win it. You're the last person in it. So normally the last person in a tournament has the least amount of time for adjustment on the next tournament. I won Cincy in Montreal, and I played, 12 days out of 14. And I literally had an afternoon travel day, and then I had to play again on, Sunday and Tuesday. Right. And now it's just, you have all the time in the world. There's never been more time to adjust to a court surface. But the ball, like my elbow doesn't respond to this one. And then it's like, imagine if pitchers, what would happen to their elbows if the balls or the baseballs they were throwing were different weights, right? Take a tennis ball and throw it as hard as you can. Take a baseball and throw it as hard as you can. And tell me that if you had to do that professionally over and over and over again in an extreme way, that those wouldn't affect your body differently, right? Whereas if you have one, you can kind of train for it, or at least if there's some consistency where they're not like insanely different. I don't know. I think I didn't realize that was a problem that needed solving. I hadn't heard much about that.
No. Can I bring one other thing up about Indian Wells real quick? Since we talked about the Oscars, and I saw someone say, what's Coco doing at the Oscars? She's got to get to the desert, as if there's like this Sherpa waiting to take you to the middle of the Mojave. I think something. I mean, I don't. I hope this isn't.
She doesn't play for a week.
But, the other thing too is like people should know that we call it the desert, and it's very dramatic and beautiful setting. It's only 2 hours from LA, and I think something we overlook is that with no LA tournament now, this is as close as you can do a whole lit. Taylor Fritz and Brandon Nakashima, and you go down to Lerner Tien and Alex Mickelson and some players like Naomi Osaka. For a lot of players, this is essentially a home game. I mean, this is tennis goes to Southern California, and Taylor Fritz is a former winner. He clearly has done pretty well. But I think sometimes we overlook that. This is not as though they plopped a tournament in the middle of Sahara. This is 2 hours from LA, and you see the celebrities there, and this is basically the LA tennis. This is LA big tennis market. This is like the LA Tennis Festival now, that there is no event in San Diego or Los Angeles. I think sometimes we lose sight of that.
Well, let's also let me give you a kind of behind the scenes look at when Coco, who is a business unto herself, Osaka was at the Oscars also a business unto herself. Like these people are running businesses that are based around themselves. Coco is rarely going to get a better chance to either knock something out for a sponsor, or if your world is, well, she shouldn't have sponsors, then okay, then we're not going to agree. Obviously, that's insane. She's not going to get a better path towards knocking out a bunch of shit in LA. And to your point, John, being in her hotel room in Indian Wells three hours later without having to get on an airplane, right? Like it is the most logical kind of loop where you're going to land in LA probably anyways, right? And then you're going to, especially if you're coming from East Coast, and then you're going to cruise through, spend a night, spend 2 days. Doesn't mean you're not hitting. You're hitting during that. You can very easily practice until 3 and then do everything she did that night and then still be back on the court the next morning at 10 or 11 a.m. It's not hard. And listen, like, I think we should focus on, they should be doing this to the people that actually struggle with being professional in training. I'm not sure Coco is the target for that, but in the world of reality, when you're a global superstar, stopping in LA to do whatever she has to do, promoting a brand, a business, whatever it is, and then going to Indian Wells is about as tight an operation as you're going to get to knock out some stuff that is on your to-do list. Like just simply. So you got to kind of think of the whole flow of the whole thing. One more thing about Indian Wells, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and then we'll move on. Novak looked great in Australia. He looked phenomenal beating Alcaraz. He beat Mahac, he beat Lehechka, who have since gone on to play great. They were on the short list of guys that we liked going into the year. Beats Alcaraz in a primetime match. Gets hurt, puts out the image of a tear. And I just assume, and I always get it wrong because I apply what it would take most people to recover from something. I didn't think we were going to see Novak. I lazily asked, you put out an image of a tear. It's not as if I look at it and know what it is. I just know that it's not great. So sent it to an orthopedic friend of mine. He's like, oh gosh, normally that would take a while. It'd be 6 weeks. So I'm like, oh, in my mind, I'm going, oh, we're not going to maybe Monte Carlo as a nice little home game for him now, but we've seen him twice. We saw him, 2 weeks ago in Doha, and he's playing Indian Wells, and great for them. You lose Sinner, you gain Djokovic. That's a good offset for them to not have the number one player in the world. But all of a sudden, I'm sure at the end of Australia, Indian Wells thought, and Tommy Haas thought they had no chance of Novak posting for this.
Yep, riding tandem with Andy Murray too. So not only is Novak there in the field, but he's got his coach with him. And I don't know. I mean, if we spend as much time sort of trying to read tea leaves about Novak and his body and retirement, and I know, it's been take the Olympics out, and it's been almost a year and a half since his last title. You know what? The guy's a few weeks from 38. He's still in the top 10. He beat Carlos Alcaraz at a major a couple weeks ago, and now he's playing this full schedule. You know what? Great. And he's not looked his best. I mean, I don't know if you saw that clip of him walking. I think it was in the airport after he lost that match and was hobbling. I think it's great he's still out here, and I think the focus ought to be on great. It's terrific that Novak Djokovic is still playing at this level and playing with this level of commitment and bringing his new coach with him. The joyride's going to end at some point, but let's enjoy it and not focus on the negative.
Big news: we're bringing Served to South by Southwest in Austin. On Monday, March 10th at 2:30 p.m., I'll be hosting a live episode on the Vox Media podcast stage presented by Smartsheet with none other than Brené Brown. If you're at South by Southwest, don't miss this. All badge holders are welcome. For more details and to check out everything happening on the Vox Media podcast stage, head to voxmedia.com/SXSW. See you in Austin. One of my absolute favorite things that I didn't realize was going to be an added benefit from doing this podcast is we'll do a show, right? Last week we talked and I mentioned two things that I kind of went on rants about last week that were, penciled in, but certainly not something that we thought we were going to spend much time on, was the idea of throwing a bunch of 250s on the backside of World Tour finals to create more space for the players that play the most. Simple idea in theory. I go on one. There is a version of that I think would be responsible. You don't need, 250s post US Open should be used as travel weeks. Mike and I got off air. I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned that also. But one of my favorite things is having an idea, saying something on air, and then having like legends of our sport somehow waste their time listening, but then 2 or 3 times a week after a big show, I'll get, whether it's a text from Andre and we're talking about how Ben Shelton should serve, and I get 4 paragraphs from him about it, and then it's a discussion, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the nerdiest, best thing ever. It's selfishly my favorite. And then Jim Courier. telling me, okay, well, this is, you should have kind of gotten a little bit more into the weeds on the schedule situation. And, 4 weeks isn't tenable. 4 weeks at 250s isn't tenable because of X, Y, and Z. And basically the big notes are you can't move the US Open. So it's not as if you can shift a bunch of things, from before the US Open and throw them at the end of the year. That's not a realistic thing. I didn't do a great job explaining that. But then Jim sends me, spends, pretty good amount of time, sending me a whole bunch of stuff. US Open week off, Beijing, Tokyo, Shanghai, 8 days, Sunday to Sunday, 250 in Europe. So basically using the 250s as travel weeks. Paris apparently was rumored to have been looking at selling at one point. He's like, if that goes, then you open up the entire thing. But then it gets to a really good conversation where we don't agree on all things and what's possible, but we have the same questions. Is there going to be a review of making every Masters 1000 into a 10-day event? Like, we can take some of those weeks back. He put Shanghai on here as like 8-day event, Sunday to Sunday. You could probably figure it out the before and after for most people if they're playing an event the week before. So that's one. And then why is the ATP, why is it their responsibility to carve up their calendar for Davis Cup? Why do we have to? So now Davis Cup has done this, right? So we still are carving out weeks during the ATP schedule as Davis Cup weeks, right? But then we used to have 2 teams that got screwed by Davis Cup being so late, but the upside was one of those teams could win Davis Cup. So it's like a no-brainer. We won it. I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about Australia yet. All I wanted to do was win Davis Cup. Now we have all the teams that qualify for finals playing as late in the year as possible, and we're still giving them weeks in the calendar. So we've screwed more people over. Everyone's playing longer. But it gets to the point where at some point, producer Mike, I want to sit down, kind of similar to what we did with the money episode last year, where it's like money in tennis, and we walk you through some of the good parts, some of the bad parts, but give you a very sober accounting of why things are the way they are sometimes and how it operates. And if you haven't listened to those episodes, still might be one of our favorite episodes that we've done just because I was learning along the way. But I think we have to actually sit down, and instead of getting into the habit where we become a part of the thing that I hate, where you act like solutions are easy, let's actually sit down and take a sober view and put out the served calendar and what would probably work and explain the reasons why it's necessary and what would need to happen realistically to make it happen. Because he's right. Jim's right. He goes, why don't you talk about the fucking Easter Bunny next time? Like, obviously the US Open can't move. Like, it can't move. And he calls you on it. And so what's possible? What are the moving parts? And who's to blame for us ending at the end of November? And there's probably some shared blame. But we now, we knew making the 1000s so long, it wasn't working last year. And what do? Canada and Cincinnati now taking up another week. And we're adding another one. That's going to be another 10 days. Just do this thing for me. If the ATP would come out and just say, you know what? We don't give a shit about your calendar. Then I'd be like, okay. But to be precious about it and then continually choose to add more weeks, we can't go 6 months without them adding a week and offer no solutions to solve for it, actions and words. And I mean, listen, I've had some conversations with some guys, and they're great. They're open, but I don't know. It's just like it's like a circle firing squad with, the slams blaming the tours and the tours blaming this and then this blaming the slams. And it's a circular firing squad where there's not a lot of accountability for your own decisions. But then when someone else does something to screw it up, it's like you shine a spotlight on that little thing that they do. Right. So I think at some point, producer Mike, it can't be in the next couple of weeks because we have, Indian Wells, Miami, but maybe soft circle something in April where we actually put the time in and do it responsibly. So I don't have to write back to Jim and go, you know what? You're right. I could have thought more and explained it better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even extending some of the money in tennis side of it too is I didn't know how the 250s and 500 ownership structures were. I didn't know you could sell a 1000 to another event and sell it to the, Italian Tennis Federation to clear path for them to have a longer week. So I'm super fascinated in this conversation, not just from the core of actual physical schedule and what's best, but I also think just understanding how to actually be able to do that realistically than just saying these should go here, these should go here. There's a ton of parties involved. And I think it requires a deep dive. It might even be a couple episodes, to be honest with you.
That'll be a nerd. That'll, be towards 100 on the nerd scale of what people care about. Yeah, exactly. It's the shows that we love to do that will get no rating.
I was going to say, this will not, Spotify streams will not go crazy, but it's really a fundamental problem. And I think it's a really good idea because it's very easy to sit here and say, I don't understand. Why don't they just make Indian Wells, blah, blah, blah. The Australian Open should be in April. And you sort of have to explain why. But that said, there are a lot of impediments. There are some chess pieces that can be moved. And Jim has thought about this a lot. Maybe we even get Jim on. But I think that's a great idea. It's really a fundamental issue for the whole sport.
Yeah, there are reasons for certain things, and I do think people take those reasons, shed the light on someone else, and go, "Well, they did this, so we're going to do this," and then it creates a thing where it's just short-sighted. I just wish tennis wasn't so short-sighted. If we had 2 more years or 3 more years of extending careers with our stars, everyone gets better. So we're going to do that at some point. I really want to, in a very sober, calculated way, come up with our best schedule and maybe share this is the roadblock we ran into when we were trying to march this out. This is why this isn't possible, right? You can't just move this. And, for those of you that care to listen, we'll probably spend like 28 minutes on moving the Transylvania Open, which no one will give a shit about because we're going to release the Rafa show next Tuesday, right?
Yeah, just a little guy named Rafa.
God,
we're going
man,
to do an interview with in the Dominican Republic.
I'm so excited.
We're going to Zel Punta Cana.
Yeah,
very excited.
I can't wait to. I don't know that I've ever sat down. Rafa and I, very cordial relationship. I've felt nothing but respect from him always. When he doesn't have to give it to someone like me, obviously, but he gives it to everyone. And obviously, we're well on record with our shows. You can go check our Rafa retirement shows to see what I think about him. We've never sat and talked tennis at all. Like, not for a second. Not for 1 second. So as a fan of the game, even though it's someone I played against, won sometimes, lost way more. Like, I can't wait. This is like this show. It's just given me so much life because of the nerd conversations I get to have with Jim Courier and Bob Bryan, and then going and doing a show with Rafa. We're doing a live show. You want to plug our live show at South by next week, Mike Hayden?
Yeah, we are being joined by Brene Brown, which I'm really excited for this conversation. We will be part of the Vox Media podcast stage presented by Smartsheet. Will be March 10th at 2:30. All South by Southwest badge holders are welcome. Please come check us out. We'll have a little fan Q&A also. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I'm really pumped for that.
I'm excited kind of as someone who isn't an interviewer by profession, like a Jon Wertheim. Brene Brown is someone that, if you don't know her, just do a quick Google, check out a pod, everything. She's just an amazing, amazing woman. Taking her strategies and her knowledge base on leadership and somehow trying to fit that and apply it backwards to tennis landscape, whether it's a tour level, whether it's a player level. I look forward to kind of shaping that conversation and kind of learning along the way. Mike, I think we should just do, like, for people like Brene Brown, like, we don't need to be nerds every week. I think we should just do a different show where we get access to a bunch of cool people.
I'm down with that.
I love that idea.
I think something that's not complete tennis nerddom. I think I'm down for that.
All right, fuck it. Let's do it. JW, what else you got?
What else we got? I want to give a shout out to Matt Van Tynen, who has been an integral part of Indian Wells and the BNP Paribas Open for, must be 20 years now. He's going through some real health challenges, but he will be on site, which is great news. And we're thinking of him. I don't know if you caught this note. This is on Tuesday. This was on my feed. This Federico Agustin Gomez, one of these player names that sort of makes it in your. I don't know if it's sort of, we have these names that sort of pass when you check your match results, and maybe you don't know that much about him. He's 28 years old, ranked 135 from Argentina, right up around his career high ranking. He had a really sort of a chilling, poignant, brutally honest post about his mental health challenges. And I think sometimes we forget sometimes that athletes are real people that go through real people things, and they have adversity, and they have deaths in the family, and they have mental health struggles. And it's very easy to say, this guy sucks. And we've seen the vitriol from gamblers. We forget these are real people with real problems. And if you read this post, it's really quite something that he shared it with us. It's really quite something that he's achieved this level of success. Again, the career high ranking, there are only 134 better players than him in the world, but he's really going through some really dark times. I can't say I've ever seen him play, but I was really affected reading this dispatch of his, and I would encourage people to read it. And if you happen to be at a tournament where he's playing, Coco, Novak, Carlos Alcaraz, they're great. They're going to be okay without your applause. Sometimes some fan support for a player like Federico Gomez would mean the world. So I would keep him in your thoughts as well.
Good call on that, JW. One other thing I want to give a shout out to Ryan McCauley. Desert Smash is a charity event that's been going on before Indian Wells. And you see a lot of events that come and go. They do a year or two, well-intentioned, but then scale and organization becomes an issue. Props. This has been around since 2004 now, and we're talking monster names throughout the year. I think Pink's there again this year. Every player who you've ever heard of in the last 20 years has played it. Charlize Theron is always there. So go check out desertsmash.com. Really cool event they do before Indian Wells. They've added pickleball, but we won't hold that against them. They do a great job. There's a DJ, there's a whole thing. So shout out to Ryan McCauley. I think Shark has something to do with it also. But always a good time. You get to see your favorite players up close. Maybe your tickets at Indian Wells don't get you within 2 rows of your favorite players. You can here. So go check it out. It'll come out. This show will come out Tuesday morning. It starts Tuesday afternoon, but now it's a 2-day event. So go check out something or just go donate. desertsmash.com. A lot coming down the pipeline. Can't wait for Indian Wells. Listen, I complained about them fixing a problem that didn't exist. I need to say something to at least get off and not feel like guilt. Maybe the best evolution of a tennis tournament in history. And I don't know why I said tournament like James Blake right there, because I've always said tournament. But here we are. What Larry Ellison and crew have done with that event is phenomenal. It might be the best event on earth. Proximity, the way they thought out the practice courts, the dining options, what you can see, what you can do, the different stadiums. Definitely go check it out. It is maybe the best event on earth. And if there was a player or a pundit who disagreed with me, I got to think it would still be in their top 3, right? I think it's become that good of an event. So for all the problems that they're solving that didn't need to be solved, like the court surface to match up with the tournament in September, they have solved and been best in class at solving problems that need to be solved. Producer Mike.
Let's end the show with a little trivia then. Okay. Talking about Indian Wells. Carlos Alcaraz is going for the rare three-peat. Who are the other 2 players to ever do it on the male side at Indian Wells?
Okay. Ooh. Fed's going to be one of them. It would have been...
Correct.
Yeah, it would have been... Fed's going to be one. And then the other one is so three-peat, 3 in a row.
I was going to say.
That's what it says, yeah.
And this is at the old venue also. This is like... Can we get this is from
back to the hotel parking lot venue?
This is a tough one because
it just says Indian Wells, so I don't know.
I don't think Rafa won it 3 times.
Man, I don't think so.
I don't think Novak
I don't think won.
It's going to be a sneaky name. Like I don't think it was Andre.
It's guys. I got to be honest. It's not a sneaky name.
Is it Pete?
No, it's Novak.
It's Novak.
Novak won 3 in a row.
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah,
overthought it.
All right.
Mr. Roger Federer.
Yeah,
so,
it's like it's
Carlos has a good path towards it.
It's so crazy. Like they've accomplished so much that we forget they won one of the hardest tournaments in the world 3 years in a row. Right. It's like
it's got to be Derek Rastani.
It's got to be somebody else.
Yeah, it's like he won.
Can't be the most obvious.
Yeah, if it was like a hacker like me, it was like you remember that time he got lucky and won Indian Wells 3 times? Jeez. Everyone would remember that, but that's just a testament to their own greatness and shadows and how they've ruined trivia for all of us because they won everything a million times.
Exactly.
Anyways, we'll catch you next week. One with Rafa and one with the legendary Brené Brown. Thanks for listening to Serve.